Oh, I lost my screen share. Okay, go by the dots, go by open speaker notes.
Yep, and then go back to
the one.
The first one.
I still don't have them. Oh no.
So go ahead and so don't navigate through your slides. Go ahead and go back to the beginning.
Open speaker notes.
Yep, and then use previous and next.
Okay, good. I don't know what I touched, but I'm not going to do too much touching. Okay, there we go.
All right, well, welcome. Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. We're waiting for a few more to join us. All right, perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our virtual tour for the Timken today. Today, we're so excited to have Italian Treasures of the Timken Museum presented by our lovely docent, Becky. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Please keep yourselves muted throughout the lecture and save all questions for the end. You are all muted right now, so that's perfect. If you would like to use the chat function in order to put your questions there, and we'll address those at the end as well, please feel free to do so. If you're joining us over Facebook Live, you can also use the comment section there, and you can place your question there, and we'll be monitoring that as well. Finally, this lecture is being recorded, and as well as I mentioned earlier, being live streamed on Facebook. So if you would like to go back and see any of this lecture or any other lectures that we've put on through the Timken, please check out our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, and you'll find all of those there. Perfect. So without further ado, as I mentioned earlier, we're so excited to have Becky here with us, and she'll be presenting on some of the Italian pieces that we have at the Timken and beyond. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
Thank you, Samantha, so much, and welcome everybody. I'm just thrilled to have you and have this opportunity. And we are going to be talking about there's lots of treasures in the Timken, but we're specifically going to focus in on the Italian treasures. And here we have a picture of the external framework of the Timken Museum, and it is being remodeled as we are speaking now, and will be open in the fall, and we just can't wait till that happens. It opened originally, though, in October 1965, and we owe its existence to the generosity of two families. The first family is Henry Timken, who the museum is named after, and he invented the taper roll bearing. And the family not only helped fund the building of our building, but also before that, the San Diego Museum of Art. And that's just really, really very generous of them. The second family is the Putman family. And first of all, their uncle, the sister's uncle, which I'm going to mention in a second, Henry Putman, he invented a lot of different things. He moved to California, he invented bottle tops, mop squeezers, how to make barbed wire. And, he had a lot of real estate holdings. And he did retire in San Diego. Well, what happened was his brother, also Albert Putman, moved to San Diego. He brought his 3 single daughters with him. And they were very devoted to the scholastic studies, languages, books, and they had over 800 books in their 8,000 books in their library. And they also bought many, many paintings in the and help. When their father died, Albert left them with $258,000, which back in the early 1900s was quite a bit. And then Willie, their cousin, inherited their father's, Mr. Timken, money. And then when he died, he gave his cousins over $5 million to add to that. Well, that's a really nice gift from a cousin. I think I'm going to have to call mine up today and kind of remind her about these things. So what happened was these sisters then were able to buy these masterpieces and all over the world. And Amy loved Russian, and she went to Stanford and studied the language and the history of it, and also bought many, many, over 400 pieces of Russian icons. They decided as they were getting older, Mr. Ames helped them to to develop a Putnam Foundation, and that's how they got involved with the San Diego Museum of Art. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a disagreement between Amy and the director, and she basically, I think probably in so many words, but as a lady, said to get lost. And so therefore, she sent her paintings all over the country. So Mr. Ames was thinking, with this foundation, San Diego needs to keep these pieces here. And so that's how the Timken Museum. So Mr. Timken built the building, and the sisters donated the paintings. This is a copy or a picture of the Timken Museum, the Italian gallery, but this was taken before the pandemic. And we're going to talk about some of the pictures on this wall, especially the one where everyone is standing in front of. Now, here we have Rome. Italy. And Italy was basically founded in 700 BC. The Roman Empire was founded in about 27 BC with Augustus Caesar. Unfortunately, he was assassinated. The Roman Empire did break up into many cities or separate kingdoms in 395. And just for a little trivial question, you might have seen when I've been in Italy, I've seen the letters SPQR. S in Sam, P as in Paul, Q as in quarter, and R as in Rebecca, or Rome. And it means the Republic of Rome. These Romans, they built all over their empire over 250,000 miles of road, but they had paved over 50,000 miles of that. So that's really something. So that helped increase the communication. And I would also say it also helped those to get their armies around and everything. And we will be looking at several cities here. We're going to be talking about, of course there's Rome, but we're going to be talking about Florence, Venice, and Siena in our presentation. Our first presentation is a really neat piece of art. I really like it. It is called the Madonna and Child and Two Angels. There's 12 scenes of the Passion of Christ. And the Passion basically represents toward the end of Christ, right before he dies and then when he dies. The artist is the Madeleine Master, and he was very well known, and they feel that this piece was one of his last works, probably before he died. He did the centerpiece, and they feel that an unknown Florentine painter did the sides. This was probably what they call a painted dorsal, and it was on tempera on wood, and this was in 1310. Usually these panels were the painted dorsal tempera on wood. Dorsal means behind. This was behind the altarpiece. Usually they had curtains or a painting, and this could have been one of the paintings that was in behind an altarpiece. The style, we see the reason why they think there's two different paintings is because of the style. It's very different. The center is more medieval and style, and when the sides reflect more of a gelato style. So we see, let's talk about the center one. There we see, it's probably a little like the icons that we talked about with the Russian icons. There's a straight, Mary is looking at you straight ahead. There's almond-shaped eyes, long nose, even like an almond-shaped face. Perhaps she has long fingers, and she's wearing a very beautiful blue robe or cloak, and then a reddish or cloak inside, or dress inside. We have Jesus on her left knee, and they both have halos, but Mary has a crown. But Jesus is giving he's giving you the sign of peace, and he has a coronation. They felt that when Mary went ahead and she cried, especially when he was being crucified, that when her tears dropped to the ground, they turned incarnations. It is a very flat painting, and I would say it's a Byzantine type of style. Here we have a little, probably at the beginning of um, the beginning of the Renaissance. We have the 12 scenes. We have on the very left upper, we have the Last Supper, and then next to it is the arrest of Jesus in the garden, and he's being kissed by Judas, and that is how he is betrayed. We have the flagellation where they're beating Christ with whips, and then we have the mocking Jesus. And that probably in another painting, we will see how they mocked him. And then we have the Via Crucis, and that is like the walk along the way that Jesus took with the cross throughout the city of Jerusalem. And you can do that walk today in Jerusalem, or it's called the Way of Sorrows. Then we have in the upper, no, I'm sorry, we have them. We have the disrobing of Christ, and then we have the Christ mounting the cross, the crucifixion, and we see at the bottom of the crucifixion a very well-known person is Saint Francis, and we will see him in many of the paintings. And we see the deposition, them getting the body of Christ down, the entombment right by is the scene that is right by the little Jesus. They're putting Jesus in the tomb. And then the three Marys, the next scene to the right of that is three Marys at the tomb. And the last one is Mary and Jesus. And he says, don't touch me. The only way you can now connect with me or communicate with me is through prayer and faith. Our next one is from Italy, Siena. It's temper on gold and wood. And this was a central panel of an altarpiece also. They feel that it is the central panel and it's part of the triptych where the sides were, but it's very large and probably was commissioned by the church. You see that the frame and the background, the throne represents, they feel, the golden throne, the church. Well, they said this must have been a very expensive piece because when you see all the gold and then the blue, her blue cloak is is painted with lapis, which is, they're both very, very expensive. The artist is, this is in 1387, and the artist, his name is Niccolo de Bonacorso. He is he was from Siena. He was very accomplished, and he just loved to paint, especially altarpieces. We see that the Mary and the child are looking at one another. So that's starting to be, because normally in the Byzantine area, they didn't really show emotions or even looking at each other, acknowledging each other. We see the oval faces and the eyes, elongated nose, the face, the fingers, and Christ kind of does look like an old man with very similar qualities that has that that I mentioned about the face and the fingers and everything. He has a flower he is offering to Mary. It's called the white rose flower, and it's a symbol of purity. And it's been said that Mary was really called the rose without thorns. And what that means is that before the fall of man, the roses never had thorns. And then once the fall happened, the roses grew thorns. But now they're saying that Mary is the rose without thorns. We also see on the lap of Jesus strawberries, and that represents Mary's spiritual purity, her righteousness, her nobility. And this is just, I think, just a beautiful, beautiful painting. Our next one is by the same author. I'm sorry, I'm thinking we're reading books. No, we're looking at paintings. It's by Niccolo de Bonacorso. And this is a 1387, and it's temper on gold on wood panel. And it is a triptych. And what it is probably was folded to close, and it was carried with people as an altarpiece as they traveled and everything. We see the frame it is in. It is like a Gothic shaped frame. Um, there's, as you can see, kind of the pointed areas on the top of the frame. Uh, we have the center theme of Mary, who's underneath an arch, and so is the two patron saints on her right and her left. We'll talk about Mary. Mary, she's dressed in a gold, and then she has a red and with a blue mandala cloak, which is attached with a brooch. She's sitting on a cushion on a marble floor, and Christ is on her right knee, giving her a blessing with his right hand. And the left hand, he's holding a banderola. It's like a little flag, and I think of the flags on sailboats, but we're unable to read what is on there. He is, there's a bench behind her with a bobbin, knitting needles, yarn, and a red book on a cushion. And there's also some sewing tools. We see that the sewing tools, it's been mentioned that Mary was one, it's believed that Mary was one of the several virgins to weave the veil in the temple. There's a veil that separates the holies of holies, and then there's from mankind. And she was, they feel, was one of the virgins asked to weave this veil. We'll go ahead and go up before we talk about the side panels, and we see the angel on the left-hand panel, upper left, and that angel is the one who is announcing to Mary that she's going to give birth to the Christ child. And over on the extreme right, in the upper, we have Mary, and she similarly dresses to Mary in the center, and it looks like she may be sitting on a similar cushion and floor, and she is receiving this news. Below Mary is Saint Christopher, and he is wading through the waters of a river filled with fish, and he is carrying the Christ child, who is holding a globe on his left shoulder. And they say as he was walking the water, it got heavier and heavier. And that is Saint Christopher, the patron saint of travel. When we go over to the left wing, there is Saint Catherine of Alexandria, and she is crowned with, and she's wearing a rose mantle over a yellow dress, and she's holding the red book also in her right hand with a palm branch in her left. And she is leaning on the spike wheel, which was to be a part of her murder, her attempted murder, which it didn't work. And we will talk a little more about Mary and about Catherine in a few. Well, I'll just go ahead and talk about her now. She was a young girl when she was from Alexandria. She was a very young girl, got saved to Christianity at the age of 14, and she begged her father to be able to go and talk to the Emperor Maximus. And because he was really persecuting the Christians, and she was going to ask him and say to him, please don't do this. Well, she went, he didn't like it, and he says, I tell you what, I want you to debate my most intelligent people in this country, in Egypt, and we'll see who wins. So she does, and she won the debate. And so at the end, when she won the debate, her arguments were so logical and so touching that the debaters accepted Christianity. And of course, immediately they were murdered, they were killed. So then the king did not like that, and so he had her beaten and threw her in jail. Well, while she was in prison, jail, over 200 people came to visit her, and she had an opportunity to share Christianity with them. And those who weren't Christians became Christians. It is said that there were angels and doves coming to minister to her, giving her food and ministering to her wounds. So even the king's wife came and talked to her, and the king's wife became a Christian. Well, that did not make him happy. So of course he had to kill his wife. he eventually left her out of prison and said, I tell you what, let's get married. Now, I don't think in the past that was a great way to extend courtship or anything. And she said, absolutely not. I'm married to Jesus. Well, he didn't like that. And he said, okay. And he put her on the wheel and he was going to kill her. Well, it ended up the wheel shattered and he was determined. So what he did, he had her beheaded. And that's how St. Catherine had died. Here we see is her St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. As I shared with you the story, this is also, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site where they have many, many people come to visit. It's the oldest working monastery, and it has also one of the oldest library. And it was built in 548 to 565. Next, we have our another triptych, and it is by, let me get my notes. It is the Trinity. It is by Luca Tomei between 1355 and 1386. It's tempera on panel, and it's a triptych. This is the Trinity and the Crucifixion, the scenes of the life of Christ. Here we see is we'll look at the panels first. At the top left, we have an angel. Once again, just like the other one, telling Mary, who's on the very left, that she is going to bear on the very right, she's going to bury the Christ, and she's going to bear the Christ child. And she's taking that into, her thoughts and everything. Below on the left, we have two scenes. One is the manger nativity scene. It is, it's very beautiful. They have things that you will see that would describe that, yes, she's in a manger, the animals. And then in the background against the rock, they used to carve holes in it and then put like a roof over it. And that would be considered like a barn. The next one below is the adoration of the Magi. And you see the Magi coming and adoring Christ. And in these pictures, you also see the Star of Bethlehem. Now, the left side represents, if you had to look at it, people are welcoming the Christ child. It represents Mary's joy, the mystery of birth, incarnation. And then we go over here and we look at the right side of it, and we see Christ being mocked. And here they're pulling his beard, they're blowing a horn in his ear, they've been beating him, they put on a coat, a king's cloak, to mock him, and that's Christ getting mocked. And then at the bottom, we see him, the lamentation of Christ. He is laid, Mary has him on his lap. Mary Magdalene is with her arms up, crying, and we see Nicodemus holding the nails from the cross. Here, this side probably represent, this right side represents Mary's sorrow. People don't want anything here. They were accepting him, and now they are looking and they don't want him. They want him to go. It represents her sorrow. It represents the miracle of redemption, lamentation, and conquering death. Because above we see him in the panel above, in the center, Christ has risen again, and he's standing near the tomb with two soldiers that are probably asleep. This is below that. It's interesting. We have the crucifixion, and then in the mandora, the blue mandora that represents heaven, we have basically one body, one pair of hands, and one pair of feet. But we have three heads, which represent Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Usually, I think after the plague, people wanted. It used to be you would have God above, then you would have the dove, and then you would have Christ crucified. Well, here they kind of engulfed it there. total because people wanted something different. Here we see at the bottom of the cross, we see Mary and St. John, who was the author of John's Gospel. And then also here we see again is St. Francis. So this is definitely has a Gothic style with the pointed frame, and it's also with the Byzantine because people were interacting a little more, but it's solid colors. Now we talked about a triptych, but now we want to talk about a diptych. And the one that I found fascinating, this is not in the Timken, but it's the Duke and Duchess of Urbino. And the artist is Pier della Francesca, and it's an oil and temper. The artist, he was born in Tuscany and he became a well-known artist. He was a mathematician, he loved geometry, and he's starting to use some of the things that they're finding and discovering how to draw in art during the Renaissance, the atmospheric perspective. And we see here that as things are closer to you, they're darker, but as they go further away, they become lighter and blurred. And that's what he's used. Well, the Duchess, she was married at 14, and her husband was 24 years older than her, but they were very, very happy. And I guess you could say she was his soulmate. Unfortunately, she died after delivering their seventh son. And so this is a diptych. A diptych that that was drawn with both of the Dutch and Duchess looking at each other. He was a successful mercenary captain. He was an intellect. He was a civic leader. He had a large library, not as large as the Vatican, but close to it. But he was also, you know, his military experience. He was not in a battle, but kind of like in a contest where his right eye, and he lost his right eye, his eyelid, and the bridge of his nose. And you can see that you can't see that. You can see that you can't see that, but the left side. Whereas the Duchess, she has, we see her, and they say that she was probably dead when this painting was done. And so it was probably taken from the death masks that they had on her. And you can see that she's very pale, and she has a very high forehead. Well, that was very common back then. Back then, they would shave the forehead. Nowadays, we put ointments on our hair because we don't want it to lose our hair. But they would shave their head, and they would also dye their hair with urine to make it yellow. So I found that to be interesting. And so when you fold it closed, this is the background of what's on the back of this diptych. And so we see here, there's some portraits that we see. The lady is on the right and Duke is on the left. And it's seen from his triumph. So on the left, that you have his car, they call it the car, being pulled by horses. He's sitting on a throne, and you see some people on the wagon car, and they represent temperance, fortitude, and justice and prudence. So those were the things that he saw in himself, or was told, or he did have. Whereas the Duchess on the right, she's sitting on like a chair or a throne, and she's being pulled by unicorns. That basically stands for chastity. And her fellow people that are with her on the car, on the wagon, represent modesty, charity, and faith. They're sitting in the front of the car. And the Latin inscription below basically says about him that, you know, his virtues are temperance, fortitude, justice, and prudence. But hers says that she is honored by the achievements of her husband. Here you can see a lot of soft colors, and once again, atmospheric perspective, dark colors in front and lighter colors in the back. We have here a Renaissance mat, probably in the of Venice. This is basically what happened in the 6th century. The people from the mainland, the Romans, as Rome was breaking up, the barbarics were invading their country. So they had to, basically, the Romans had to run. They hit on these islands. There was 120 islands that make up Venice today. And so they knew they were protected because, one, the barbarics didn't have boats. They did not know how to swim, and they would sink with all that heavy armor. So what they did, then they would leave, and the people would go back to their homes. But this started becoming more and more frequent. And so they said, we have to do something. The Romans said, we have to do something. So they took trunks of alder trees, and like a log, alder trees, and they had a point at the bottom of it. And this wood was very resistant to water, and they would drive each trunk very close together into the soft layer of sand, mud, until it reached the harder layer of compressed clay. They compact them together, and then they put plates on them, and then they piled these plates up, and then they were able to put the bricks on. They used the limestone on the side of the buildings. If you ever go to Venice, you'll notice that there's some limestone on, and this was water resistant. Unfortunately, when the water did rise, I think it was in the 60s, and Venice was flooded, a lot of it was flooded. The bricks received a lot of the buildings were touched by the salt water, and unfortunately, that's not compatible. And so when you look at the bricks, and they show us some in St. Mark's, there is salt on them, and that's very destructive. So our first painting from Venice is by, it's called The Torment of Saint Anthony, or it could be the Trials of Saint Anthony, and it's by Giovanni Sabodo. And this is oil on campus, and we are starting to, we are in the Renaissance era, and that's also another thing they started that was different. They started using canvas and applying oil. The artist Salvador, he was a Venetian Renaissance. He was married to a Flemish woman, and so they did live a little while in the Netherlands, but he was very influenced by Flemish artists like Bosch. This artist is also known for his landscapes at night and the various little science fiction little character. He talks about Saint Anthony, who was a Christian monk, and Saint Anthony was in Egypt. He was born to wealthy parents. He sold his property and gave everything to the poor, and he put his sister in what they said with a group of Christian virgins, or what we would say a place where nuns lived. At the age of 35, he found a Roman fortress that was abandoned and lived there 20 years. And he was thrown food and supplies over, they threw food and supplies over the wall. They came, and then after a while, he came out, and they were surprised he was not emaciated, but very healthy in mind and body. He stayed out for about a few years and helped teach. And then he went back into solitary, a mountain between now and the Red Sea. He lived as a hermit for 45 years until his death. He's known as the father of monks. He was, unfortunately, during this time, he was afflicted with nightmares and conflicts with the devil, the demons and the devil in shapes of wild beasts, women, anything to try to tempt him, but he stand firm and would not be influenced by temptation through prayer and fasting. These demons, they inflicted so much harm on him, they made wounds, and they left him almost for dead. As we see in this picture, the rock in the middle probably separates the cool colors from the warm colors, the positive and from the negative. We see Saint Anthony in prayer, and he is pointing with his hands to a monastery in the background. We see on the right side, like hell, and it is very much little demons and everything in all different forms are on that side, and he's trying to escape them. He has, we can see here atmospheric pressure once again, the light in the back, the dark in front, and the back is a little fuzzy. We see contrast between the lights and the colors, and the positive the positive things from the negative things. Now, I said he was influenced by this Flemish Dutch painter, and he was known for his dark images and depicting hell. He was also known as the father of monsters. His name is Hieronymus Bosch, and he was very good at drawing monsters and things that were in the dark. Salvador, they say, even copied some of his paintings directly. There's really very little known about Bosch and how he viewed his paintings, like what in the world's going on. But one of his paintings that is well known is the Garden of the Light. Let's see, the Garden of Earthly Delights. And we can see this is a triptych also. It's from the Renaissance, and it basically has three panels. The one on the left depicts sin and human moral. The one on the right basically represents the Garden of Eden. I'm sorry. Oh, so sorry. The garden on the left is the Garden of Eden, and it depicts paradise, Adam and Eve. Adam's just waking up from his surgery and anesthesia, and he has Eve there, and there's very many beautiful birds and fruits, and probably a little bit of a warning of, we don't want to lose this paradise. On the middle kind of represents maybe more, this is when sin enters the world and humans are failing. There's images of demons, some half human, animals, and machinery, a little confused by the betrayal of what can happen when men fall against God. And here represents hell. This is what you're gonna pay for. You're gonna live in hell, and this is gonna be an awful place. We can see the dark contrast with the little monstrous creatures. Here we have, and you can see from maybe how Salvador was the one who, what he took from Bosch. And this is just to go back to St. Anthony. This is St. Anthony's Monastery in Egypt. It was built on site where he last lived in his 45 years. And it was built in 298 to 300. And it is also a place where people have pilgrimage. They go there for healing. Now, our next painting in the Timken is by a Renaissance painter based in Venice. He named himself at the town that he was born, Verona, and his name is Veronese. He was known, he loved large history paintings and with religion and mythology. He did use atmospheric pressure, which we can see here. He was more naturalistic, and he was known as a supreme colorist. And he loved painting biblical feasts with lots and lots of pictures. We see here in our picture that John the Baptist is shown as an infant. He's reaching up to Virgin Mary, while his mother, Elizabeth, which is Mary's cousin on the left, kneels by a crib and is kind of fondling some cloth or yarn. We see Mary, who is also looking down at John, and we see Christ, who is he is kind of holding his hands up to Saint Catherine of Alexander, because this may be a gesture to depict their mystic marriage, and she said she was married to Jesus. There's a very strong balance of warm and cool colors. It's like the light would be coming over our left shoulder, and it highlights the fold of the garments. It's very beautiful colors. And also we see St. Catherine. If you look, her head is a little smaller than her body when you compare, to proportions. Um, she has a very voluptuous body. And as we see here, not only did the artist use the atmospheric perspective, but he also used the rule of odds that a lot of artists use. They either have 1, 3, 5, and we have 5 here, objects in a painting. Now, this author also, like I said, he loved lots of people in history. He was commissioned by the Benedictine monks of this monastery in Venice, and it's off of the small island across from St. Mark in Venice. They painted a huge size, and they wanted it 66 square meters. There's lots of pigments and colors, and very many features. I think there's like over 120 figures in that. It's taken from John 2 when Jesus did his first miracle. His mother and brothers and sisters were there at this marriage in Canaan, and he brought his disciples. But unfortunately, they ran out of wine. So the mother's Mary is very concerned. So she approaches Jesus, and he makes the water. He makes wine from the water. Now, if you look at it a little closely, I had a hard time finding this, but there's the bride and groom are sitting on the right corner of the table. And sitting in the middle, we'll look at this a little closer, is Jesus and Mary. Unfortunately, in 1797, Napoleon's army came through Venice and they plundered, and they took this picture and transferred it to Paris. Because of the large size, they couldn't carry it. So what the soldiers did, they cut it in horizontal pieces and they rolled it up like a carpet, and they reassembled and restitched it in Paris. Now, Napoleon, once they got it put together, he really liked it, so he took it for his private collection. But Venice tried to get it back several times, and they said it was too fragile to travel. Well, however, it is in the Louvre today. We see here a closer of the middle of this. It's probably right in the middle where Jesus is sitting. So here we have Jesus, and to our left is Mary and some of the apostles around him. They say that there's 130 figures in the lower half. Veronis, he's in the white tunic. You see him, he's playing a viola. He's dressed in red, and he's playing the violin. And then they mention all the different, which I didn't recognize many, but there's monarchs in here, sultans, emperors, diplomats, archbishops are in this picture, in this painting. Well, so he really enjoyed this. Was the last, and he liked what, once again, we have atmospheric pressure, and it was called the Last Supper. And it was supposed to be put in place of a painting that was destroyed by a fire. It was by Timken. So he painted the Last Supper, and it had German soldiers, it had animals, and it had horse. Well, it lacked, according to the people in Venice at the time, it lacked pietness according to the church. So the Inquisition noticed this. They called him forth to a meeting, and they said, this is not right. You're going to have to redo this painting. And he goes, oh, no, I'm not. And so he basically said that artists, that they are painters that take some liberties as poets and madmen in telling a story, but he refused to repaint it, but he did rename it. And this is how we get the feast in the house of Levi, because Levi was Matthew, and Matthew was a tax collector, and he had all kinds of sinners in his house, according to that, scoundrels, pickpocketers, tax collectors. We are coming to a close, and this is Francisco Barberi. I'd like to tell you about him a little. He's also called El Corsino, and that means the squinter. he had strabismus, and obviously they didn't have surgery back then to fix it. It takes about an hour and a half to do that nowadays. He's from Cento, and he was more of a Baroque painter. He loved action and movement. He was born by peasants. He was born cross-eyed. He taught himself, and he would squint as he painted, and that probably they think helped him learn and see the lights and the darks. He was really found to be very remarkable, and he really applied depth in his works, and perhaps had, like I said, good perceptions of light and shade. He painted landscapes, frescoes, sacred objects, and he just loved. He had a lively style, tumultuous style. He also he did what we call school roll, and that's when they work with the different lights in the paintings. His pen strokes were neat, and he used to do dashes and dots and hatch lines to make forms and deep colors come together. This is one of his paintings. It's oil on canvas, and it has a very a soft palette, luminescent, and there is some perspective, along with foreshortening, where the body parts are basically maybe out of perspective, but for the angle you were working with, they are correct. They had chromatic colors with bright red for the father's robe, bright blue sky, and a blue servant's pants, and then the father's purple robe. We see diagonals, we see movement, and here Jesus tells a story, because a lot of times the people then, if he just said things outright, they didn't get it. So he tells a story. And so the young whippersnapper, he thinks he knows better, and so he wants to take his father's inheritance, and he takes off from a distance, and he just spends his money on women, wine, and song. But then COVID came along through the lands, and it left him hungry and destitute, and he did not get stimulus checks. So he started working feeding pigs, and then he realizes his servants have a much better life than he is present living, and that he's a fool, and that he really hurt his father. So he returns home, and as full of shame and remorse, and ready to ask the fathers for forgiveness, but the father sees him from far away, and he runs to him, and he kisses him. He's full of joy, and he tells the servant to bring out the best robe and ring and sandals for him to wear. And he says, fatten the calf and let's kill it, because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now he is found. So this story basically represents forgiveness and compassion, grace, and salvation. And this is just another Baroque style from the same artist: forgiveness, giving, receiving, and asking forgiveness, and true repentance with joy and a clean conscience. But it's very, very dramatic, as we can see. Our last painting here is on oil on canvas. It is the let's see. It is the Piazza at Venice, and it was done around 1700 to 710, and it is a little bit of Baroque style. This artist is named Luca Calivaras, and he was his own teacher, basically. He traveled Venice, Rome, Florence, and he studied the styles at many schools, and he would go to the streets and watch the painters paint and draw. And in these cities, he would look at these photos, and he would see, once again, forgers, porters, rascals, and pickpocketers. So I want you to look close and tell me where you see the rascals and pickpocketers, the drunkards, and how you can see who are the greedy people and the tightwads, and of course the barbers. Oh my! He painted this scene. He did, before he became famous, he would paint the background scenes in the operas. We see the Piazza of Venice from the Grand Canal next to the Mediterranean. The trading is diminished. It's in the 18th century, and this is where people would go and trade. And it used to be a very huge seaport, but with time, it became kind of like America's city of Las Vegas. People started coming here and they, they just, they, they wanted, fun and music and just having a good time. Um, as you look at this, we see the piazza with features of buildings and people. We look north and we see St. Mark's Library on the left. We see the clock tower, and they're pretty correct. These markings of this painting is today. There's two little dogs, and I want you to see if you can find them in the crowd. He used 1 point perspective, and it's really good because probably the focal point is way back in the clock tower. He complements the bright sunlight and the shadows, and probably if you look at the shadows, it's probably, if you're looking north to St. Mark's, the sun is coming from your left shoulder. And he has great architectural details and filters, and he has the cools and the grays and everything. As we see here, I would like for you to see if you can tell me who are the scallywags or the rascals and the drunkards. I'm having a hard time to tell, but we do find the dog, two dogs, and they're standing they're right below the clock, the statue that is in the let's see, it's in the big statue that you see with a person on board on the top, and then you look down and you'll see the two little dogs. So I just want to say thank you so much. I want to thank everyone at the Timken. I want to thank Megan and Christina and Samantha for their assistance, and the docents and the staff that make Timken a very, very special place. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you so much, Becky. Annette saying thank you. Thank you so much, Annette. What a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for doing that for us. A virtual round of applause. At this point, I'd be happy to take any questions that you guys may have. As I mentioned earlier, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can use the chat function. If you're on Facebook Live, you can also use the comment section as well. Feel free to ask us any questions. Again, thank you so much, Becky. What a fantastic presentation. We're so lucky to have so many of these pieces here in San Diego, and we're so excited to see them again once the Timken opens back up.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, I don't think I see any questions. So that's perfectly fine. Again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Before you head out, I just want to let you know again that if you are interested in any other tours, you can find them on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, any of our other social media. You can also find information for future tours on our website at the Timken. Our next one is coming up next Thursday again at the same time. So please feel free to check out the events on the Timken website and join us for any of those. Otherwise, have a great day today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.